So Vladimir Putin has once again leaned on nuclear rhetoric to try to deter Western intervention into Ukraine. This time he was aiming his comments at French President Emmanuel Macron after Macron said that there was a potential that NATO troops could enter Ukraine to fight against Russia. And in response, Vladimir Putin said, quote, they, and they being the collective West, NATO, France, whatever, they must understand that we also have weapons that can hit targets on their territory. All this really threatens is a conflict with the use of nuclear weapons and the destruction of civilization. Don't they get that? And this is something that not only Putin, but Medvedev and members of the Duma use all the time. It's their nuclear rhetoric button. And the reason they do that is because they know that they can't match the conventional strength of the United States, let alone the entirety of NATO. And so they use this nuclear asset that they have, where they supposedly have 5,977 nukes, as a method to deter any kind of further interference that Russia would call it into Ukraine. And this map here shows you exactly kind of the makeup of who has what. Just wanted to show that, yes, Russia does have more nuclear weapons than the United States. But I want to show you exactly what a nuclear strike would kind of look like when it comes to the United States. What you're looking at is two types of strikes. You have the 500 targets, and then you have 2,000 targets. It's different strikes from Russia. You have the limited strike against the United States, which I just don't think is something that is realistic. I think if Russia is going to hit that nuclear button, it's going to be all out. There's no way that they're going to say, we're just going to shoot 500 as a warning. The minute any of those enter the air, the United States is going to respond with a massive and devastating response. I also somewhat disagree with this map in one way. Now, obviously, the purple triangles are the 500 targets, and the black dots are a 2,000 warhead strike. So you have 500 warheads. These are the targets that would be the first 500, and then the remaining 1,500 would be the black dots. The one thing I disagree with is these three zones right here. These are the three locations for the United States' intercontinental ballistic missile fields, and these are huge fields. You can see just massive amounts of territory. Americans will somewhat get this size here. We're talking hundreds of miles or hundreds of kilometers relative to like this. These fields are like the size of some European countries. And what we look at is, I think these are not second strike. I think this is the primary target for Russia, because you want to eliminate the U.S.'s ability to retaliate. And you're hoping that the 30 to 40 minute flight, the U.S. doesn't happen to notice, and you can take out the U.S.'s capability for retaliation. The U.S. is always on guard with these. I don't think that's actually what's going to happen, but you look at, you have Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, you have Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and then you have F.E. Warren Air Force Base that straddles Colorado, Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. And so that would be the first target. Then you look at command and control sites. You have obviously Washington, D.C. being a big one. You have Cheyenne Mountain, NORAD in Colorado. You have many sub bases, naval stations. And sorry, I know Hawaii is not on here, and Alaska, but make no mistake, you will not be spared either. Honolulu would absolutely be struck because that's the headquarters of PACOM. You also have different sub bases, obviously Seattle being one. Florida has some. You have much of the Chesapeake area in Virginia where there's naval bases and stuff, Norfolk. And so this is kind of the thought process. If you are living in one of these areas, these purple diamonds, or purple triangles rather, you're definitely getting hit. But I don't think those are necessary for a strike. Like, I don't think they're hitting Boise, Idaho before they hit the nuclear sites. So I think in a 500 plus warhead attack from Russia, the primary target is going to be command and control such as DC, NORAD, the missile fields, and then anything trying to hit any kind of sub or naval infrastructure within the United States, specifically aimed at crippling a response capability. Now, that being said, there are theories that say as little as 300 nukes going off at once are enough to end life on Earth. I disagree with that. I don't think it's that small. I think there is a tipping point where it could happen based on firestorms, amount of debris, etc. But currently, I don't think it's as low as 300. Full disclosure, I'm not an expert on how that nuclear firestorm theory works. I just think that 300 nukes is relatively small given the size of these nukes versus the size of the Earth. So what this map also doesn't convey is two things. First, the U.S. does have countermeasures. We have the capability to intercept nuclear weapons en route. Not all of them, but a pretty significant chunk, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the second thing is this assumes that all of the nuclear weapons work in Russia, and we're not 100% sure that's even the case. I've heard stories of workers that go work on silos in Russia, and they find that the silos are full of water with the missiles still in them. That's obviously not going to work. So we're assuming that there's a 100% success rate, and we're assuming that there's no countermeasures from the U.S., both of which aren't exactly true in reality. That being said, if a 100% success rate strike were to take place looking at the targets on this map, it would kill about 80% of the U.S.'s population. That would mean that roughly 66 million Americans would survive. A retaliatory strike against Russia would kill roughly 75% of the population in Russia, and that would leave roughly 36 million Russians alive. So not great for either country, but the U.S. likely would come out on top in that regard. Talking about the intercept capability, the U.S. does have such a capability. Russia does not. We have the GMD, which is a kind of a mid-course boost phase interceptor. We have THAAD, which is a terminal high-altitude air defense. And then we have Aegis. If we have enough warning, we also have Patriot missiles, and those can theoretically intercept as well, but they were never meant to, and we're not entirely sure what that would look like. So based on publicly available data, not counting Patriots because that's not what they're designed to do, and not counting any secret defenses we may have, the U.S. has the capability to launch roughly 900 interceptors, and it is believed that there would be about a 500 intercept success rate. So out of 900, 50 to 60 would be successful in intercepting. That might be higher. I'm just going off of what data from 2015, and a lot can change in that amount of time. In a 2,000 nuke scenario, intercepting 500 nukes would save tens of millions of people and spare military and civilian infrastructure. In a 500 nuke scenario, looking at the purple diamond or purple I don't know why I keep saying I want to say diamonds. Purple triangles, intercepting the ability to intercept up to 400 to 500 of these might make this actually completely survivable. This also doesn't account for the fact that the GMD intercepts on the boost phase. What this means is some of these interceptors can intercept the missiles as they're taking off. When Russia fires, they use what's called a MIRVed warhead. This is a multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle, meaning that one booster carries up to 10 warheads. So if you can eliminate a missile in this boost phase, you might be able to take out anywhere between 3 to 10 MIRVed warheads at once. For Russia, they likely would probably be hit by 95% of the missiles coming out of the United States, UK, France, and that would almost certainly be completely catastrophic and cripple them entirely. They would have no response. And both the countries, incidentally, regardless of where you strike, have submarine nuclear capabilities. And this is why I say things like the nuclear torpedo is complete nonsense. I mean, yes, we have the ability to intercept some missiles, but if Russia wanted to fire on the U.S., we couldn't get them all. So things like a nuclear torpedo make zero sense because it doesn't really change the strategic calculus of what would happen. A nuclear weapon blowing up off the coast of New York is the same essentially as a nuclear weapon blowing, or New York's up here actually, New York is the same as it blowing up over the top of New York. There's not going to be a whole lot of difference here. So when I hear the Russians talk about this sweeping new strategic thought of how good this new weapon is, I kind of just laugh at it because it doesn't really bring any new capability whatsoever. So that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of what it looks like. I don't want people to be afraid because this is not going to happen. Russia is not going to attack the U.S. over Ukraine, not going to attack them over the aid to Ukraine. Putin is not that stupid. He's not willing to end the entirety of existence, especially for the Russians, over Ukraine. Now, if there was a massive outbreak where the United States and its allies were using its mammoth conventional power to move on Moscow potentially, or even St. Petersburg, then yeah, their doctrine calls for a nuclear retaliation to an overwhelming conventional force, and that's what NATO has currently. So that's not happening. Do not worry. You can sleep at night. I just wanted to show you kind of for educational purposes what that would look like.